On the planet Yagya Prime, a rut predator named Dek is on a training session. He uses a variety of tools to travel the land until he enters a cave, where his scanner tells him that his brother is hiding nearby. Dek attacks behind him with his sword and Quay blocks it just in time. The brothers begin to fight and Quay keeps taunting Dek as they move, reminding him to use the cave to his advantage. Swords keep on clashing as they move all over the cave, and after exchanging enough blows Quay manages to corner Dek but doesn't kill him. When Dek refuses to yield, Quay cuts the pillar they're standing on and Dek falls into the abyss. He manages to save himself by holding onto the wall. He climbs back up and attacks Quay again. Later on their ship, Quay tells Dek it's time to choose a prey so he can earn his place in the Yagya clan. Dek wants to go to Jenna, also known as the Death Planet, to hunt the unkillable monster Kalisk. Even their father fears it and that's why Dek wants to go after it. He's tired of his dad seeing him as a weakling. Quay doesn't approve, however Dek makes his vow. At that moment their father Njar returns and Dek welcomes his honor with a sample of his blood. Njar wonders why Dek is alive, revealing he ordered Quay to kill him because he's too weak to be part of the clan. However, Quay thinks Dek deserves a chance to prove himself. An angry Njar throws a device that captures Dek and tells Quay to kill him now, but instead Quay frees him and activates his laser to send him into the ship. Then Quay activates his shield to protect his brother since Njar opens fire. After closing the ship to keep Dek from escaping, Quay starts fighting Njar and in just a few moves he manages to disarm him. Njar activates his camouflage cloak but Quay keeps punching, so Njar stabs his hand before chopping his arm off. Then Njar strikes his son down and Quay starts crawling away, reaching for his arm rather than his sword. Njar calls him weak and stabs him, so Quay uses his last breath to activate the ship so his brother can go to Jenna. Dek watches Njar slit Quay's neck as the ship's launch knocks him out. Sometime later Dek is awakened by an alarm. The ship has been damaged by the debris in orbit and is hurling towards Jenna. Dek rushes to the seat and ejects it, so it starts falling at great speed through the Jenna sky. When a bird almost crashes into him, he activates the shield. He ends up crashing in the jungle and he roars in frustration. Determined to find the monster, Dek takes stock of his weapons to confirm everything is working well. He's startled by a noise nearby and starts searching the area. Suddenly a vine-like creature takes him by surprise and steals one of his weapons. Dek gets his sword ready, but a second vine grabs his arm and he has to cut this one while the first one escapes. Unfortunately more vines appear and reach for him until they grab his leg to drag him on the ground. Dek manages to take his bow to shoot his captor to force it to drop him, and punches the vine to keep it back. Then Dek runs to retrieve his sword and quickly slashes the vines that keep attacking him. No matter how many he cuts down though, more and more keep coming and they even start attacking together. Dek quickly dodges a few blows and jumps on top of a vine to run on it, which helps him get to the top of a cliff. The vines can't reach him up there and now Dek has a good view of the planet, which looks terrifying. Afterward Dek washes his wound in the river and uses his scanner to find a medicinal plant that can serve as a balm. On a leaf he finds a worm that starts growing red spheres and when he throws it away, it explodes. Then he goes out to explore and search for the Kalisk. On a big field he finds some strange red plants that keep hissing at him, so he moves carefully to avoid them. At that moment Dek hears a voice talking in a strange language and looks up to see Thea trapped in a huge nest. Realizing he can't understand her, Thea changes to the universal translator, which confirms she's an android known as a synthetic. Suddenly a Jenna vulture appears nearby and grabs a rock to throw at the strange plants. This makes the pods explode with red smoke and shoot their needles, which Dek quickly dodges. Thea explains that the needles can paralyze him so that the vulture can eat him. When Thea offers her help, Dek says that the Yautja hunt alone and Thea guesses he's here for the Kalisk. The vulture throws more rocks and multiple plants are activated, so Dek is hit by the needles. As he starts feeling dizzy Thea asks for a weapon, so he tosses one of his blades at her before collapsing. The vulture flies down and is about to eat him when Thea tackles the beast and brutally kills it with the blade. Dek sees her wave before passing out. Minutes later Dek wakes up because Thea has given him an antidote made from the same flower. Dek stands up and helps Thea do the same, only to notice that she's missing half her body. She explains she's a synthetic sent by the Whale and Yutani Corporation because humans can't live on this planet, but Dek doesn't care and drops her. Thea then points out that many Yautja have come for the Kalisk and none of them survived, but she did. If he takes her with him she'll guide him to the Kalisk's den, that way she gets her legs and he gets his trophy. Dek realizes that it was the Kalisk who destroyed her, but he's still not interested. However, when Thea calls herself a useful tool, Dek doesn't see it as breaking the code anymore and agrees to bring her along. While they travel, Thea never shuts up and keeps asking questions. At the river some peculiar worms begin shooting acid at them, so Dek carries Thea on his back to run faster. Unfortunately he finds the way blocked, and Thea uses the chance to teach him a lesson. She throws a sticky fruit on the ground and the creatures rush to eat it. Now they aren't shooting anymore. Once they leave the river, Dek cuts down a bunch of vines and ties Thea to his back to move more easily. In the evening they stop to camp for the night and Dek uses his device for light. Thea shares that her crew arrived on Jenna 2 years ago and she was trapped in the vulture's nest for almost 2 weeks. She had hoped that another synthetic named Tessa would come for her, and tells Dek that they have a higher sensitivity than other models. Deck sees sensitivity as a weakness, but Thea thinks it's an advantage to understand other creatures. Thea used to be stuck in the lab, but one day Tessa brought her out to explore. Unfortunately, that was also the day that the Kalisk attacked them. Meanwhile, at the crew's new base, it's revealed that Tessa looks just like Thea. She received severe damage during the Kalisk attack, so now she's in a pod being repaired. Tessa keeps repeating Thea's name and remembering the incident, so the computer reminds her that her priority is to catch the Kalisk. The computer also detects the presence of a Yautja and classifies him as a threat. When Tessa finally wakes up, she's told that Thea was captured by the Yautja. In the morning, Deck goes out to hunt for food. He comes across a bone bison, which is usually Kalisk food. Deck tries to move ahead but has to move back when he discovers that this field is covered in razor grass. When Deck's about to throw his blade, a small creature jumps from a tree and lands next to the duo. Thea can't identify it and Deck roars at it, but the little guy just roars back. Then the creature starts chasing after the bison without issues because its hard skin isn't hurt by the razor grass. Furious about having competition, Deck starts jumping from tree to follow the bison too. The weight breaks a branch and the duo falls, so Deck pierces the tree with his blade and stops the fall right before they touch the dangerous grass. When the bison runs near them, Deck jumps on it and stabs it. However, the bison throws them off by using another tree. The small creature rolls ahead of them and a frustrated Deck tackles it to start a fight, which means Thea often gets smushed. The little guy has surprising strength, but after some struggle, Deck manages to grab it by its neck. At that moment the bison comes running toward them, so Deck throws his sword and holds the bison's mouth open as the blade proceeds to cut it in half. Deck roars to celebrate a successful hunt, only for a tentacle to suddenly grab his leg and lift him. The duo has been captured by a Luna bug, whose tight tentacle tongue is stopping Deck from activating his devices. When they're about to be eaten, the little creature jumps into the Luna bug's mouth and blocks its teeth with its hard skin, breaking them. The Luna bug is in so much pain that it spits them out and leaves by walking on the razor grass. Desperate for revenge, Deck cuts down a tree to use it as a bridge. The little creature is rolling down the field already and the Luna bug captures it with its tongue, but at that moment Deck lands on its head. He stabs the monster with his sword and makes a large cut that finally kills it. Meanwhile, Tessa and her crew of synthetics are searching for Thea. They find Deck's pod before they're attacked by the vines. The crew quickly opens fire to slow them down, then they activate their flamethrowers to burn all the vines down. In the evening, Deck and Thea make camp again. The little creature is still following them and copying every move of Deck's because it's impressed by how he hunted the bison. Thea names it Bud while Deck shares the roasted meat. Thea asks Deck about his family, so he tells him what happened with his brother and father, but he refuses to accept he's grieving when Thea uses that word. He points out that Tessa counts as her sister, and Thea likes the concept. In the middle of the night, Tessa and her crew find Deck's ship, which crashed after he jumped out. There are many Yautja weapons that Tessa finds interesting, including a grenade that freezes her hand. The next morning Deck grabs Thea and leaves without Bud, insisting that he hunts alone and Thea doesn't count because she's a tool. Thea tells him about wolves and how they hunt in packs, but the alpha isn't the one who hunts the most, it's the one who protects the pack. Deck misses the point and says he'll be the alpha who kills the most. After finding a Kalisk fang near the river, the duo continues traveling in that direction and reaches Thea's base, which has been completely destroyed by the beast. Among dozens of synthetic bodies, Thea finds her legs. Thankfully, the repair machine still works and she can use it to reconnect both halves of her body, although the process will take a while. She thanks Deck for his help but also apologizes and tells him to leave because she's activated the beacon to call her crew. Thea explains her team is also after the Kalisk, so she can't let him kill it. Deck refuses to leave, saying he'd rather go down with honor than run like a coward. In the middle of the wreckage there's some spilled oil, so Deck sets it on fire to create a smoke cloud. The Kalisk soon appears and throws Deck down, damaging his sword. Deck uses a piece of metal as a shield and slides under the Kalisk to slice its belly, then he throws his small blade at its head and cuts its tail. However, the tail quickly regrows and the wound's close because the Kalisk has regenerative powers, which explains why it's considered unkillable. The monster captures Deck and throws it against the repair machine, which causes Thea's legs to fall off the table. When it grabs him again, Del cuts its tongue to free himself. The fight continues and Deck has to dodge several attacks while Thea tries to retrieve her legs. At that moment she sees a gun on the ground and opens fire at the Kalisk to distract it. Deck uses the chance to throw a chain at the Kalisk's mouth and activates a machine that starts rolling up the chain, which drags the beast back. Next, Deck takes Thea's gun and starts shooting. When the monster attacks him with its tail, Deck dodges it and closes a storage unit door to trap it. Now he can run up the Kalisk's body and make a big jump above its head to successfully decapitate it. Sadly, this is still not enough to kill it and the head quickly reattaches itself to the body. The Kalisk holds Deck down with its hug paw and sniffs it. The smell it finds prevents it from attacking. The moment is interrupted when Tessa throws a grenade to freeze both Deck and the Kalisk so she can capture them. Sometime later, Deck wakes up strapped to a table in the crew's vehicle. Thea is in suspension mode because she's connected to the repair machine and Tessa has read all her logs. She doesn't understand why Deck's alive since the Yautja usually kill weak children and says that belonging to her company should be an honor for him. Then Tessa wakes up Thea and congratulates her for getting 2 specimens. She gives Deck a painful injection to experiment on him, so Thea tries to smoothly save him by pointing out he's a runt and therefore not ideal for science. She thinks they should keep his weapons and let Deck go. Tessa still wants a sample, so she connects 2 cables to his head that cause him lots of pain. A desperate Thea turns off the machine and tells Tessa they should be more than robots that only follow orders. In fact, she wants them to be sisters. However, Tessa reveals she didn't come back to rescue Thea, she came for the Kalisk. She agrees with the Yaoya's tradition of getting rid of the weak and calls Thea broken. At that moment Tessa gets a call from Earth, so she leaves to take it after ordering a guard to box Thea up. Since the guy can't speak Yaoya, Deck asks Thea to make him open one of his devices. Thea tells the guard that Deck's device is a map and when he opens it, his head explodes. Then Thea frees Deck and alarm is triggered, so more guards come to open fire at him. Thea opens the back door and Deck jumps into a waterfall to escape. Sometime later Deck finds his crashed ship and takes care of his wounds, however there are no weapons left. He considers leaving the planet but he looks at his brother's helmet and remembers that the best wolf is the one who protects the pack. Deck returns to the jungle and starts gathering natural dangers to use as weapons, like blades of razor glass and the spikes from the red flowers. He also gets the acid worm by using the fruit. While working, he comes across Bud and smells its spit. He finally realizes that Bud is the Kalisk's child and he was spared for smelling like it, so Deck covers Bud with his own spit instead. Lastly, he frees Thea's legs so he can follow them to their owner. At the new base, Deck appears wearing the bison bones as armor and throws acid at a guard to bring him down. The legs follow a signal from Thea, who is in suspension inside a box. When 2 guards try to attack the legs, Deck quickly defeats them with a whip made with vines and razor grass. Bud also helps by destroying a guard in seconds. The duo keeps sneaking around the base, bringing down any guard in the way so the legs can keep moving without interruptions. Meanwhile, Tessa is talking to the company and reports they'll go back soon with the Kalisk. When asked about Deck, she tells them that he's dead. With his collection of natural weapons, Deck keeps destroying synthetic guards, sometimes fighting a few of them at the same time. Inside a lab, a guard manages to corner him so Deck breaks a glass cage and lets a vine sample kill him instead. When the legs find the box, they jump on a guard's neck and quickly kill him before opening the container. Thea awakes and celebrates but she hears guards coming, so she pretends to be asleep again. The legs kick a guard to make him fall and Thea jumps out to fight him while the legs confront the second guy. Both body halves help each other in battle and when a guard is about to hit the legs, they jump away and the blow destroys the other synthetic, who is being held by Thea. Then she holds up a small machine piece and the legs push the final guard's head on it to kill him too. Soon Deck finds the box too but it's empty. A guard surprises him from behind, only for Thea to kill him with a shot. Her halves are finally back together and she's surprised to see Deck, who admits he came back for her like a proud wolf. Thea wants to leave but Deck announces they must free the Kalisk so Bud can be with its mother. Suddenly an alarm goes off and Tessa tells her men to speed up the launch of the ship with the Kalisk while she investigates. A team of soldiers finds Deck, who activates the combustible worms to create a nice explosion that destroys all the synthetics in one go. Then Tessa appears inside a battling suit and shoots Deck with a laser she stole from his ship, which kills his acid worm. She uses the suit to bring down structures and pulls out a huge saw, but Deck dodges it all. In the main ship, Thea tries to access the Kalisk but the cage is locked. When a guard comes by, she fails to impersonate Tessa so she smashes the guy's head on the cage instead. Then she uses his eyes to open the lock. When an attack throws Deck into the lab, the suit hand comes down and is captured by the moving vine. Deck tries to climb it but Tessa immediately throws him off, so he hides behind a container. Tessa lifts it but doesn't see him. It turns out he's climbed on the container to be above her. Now Deck can jump on Tessa to beat her up, but she quickly closes the cockpit. Suddenly the Kalisk appears and jumps on the suit, so Tessa activates the saw to stab it and lift it. While she's distracted, Deck climbs to the back of the suit and starts ripping cables off to slow it down. Tessa throws a grenade at the Kalisk, but Deck hits it with a metal rod and makes it land on the suit's arm, so the ice makes it drop the Kalisk. The beast removes the saw from its body and attacks the suit, splitting it in two. When the upper half lands, the Kalisk devours Tessa and roars in victory. The others reunite with Deck and they watch the Kalisk check on its kid. They share a sweet moment and Deck is inspired to show his respect for the Kalisk too by bumping foreheads. Suddenly the Kalisk explodes from an ice grenade activated by Tessa, who has been alive inside the beast's stomach. She emerges from the rubble and tries to attack Thea, only for Deck to stab her from behind, finally killing her. He takes back his device and Bud rips off her head. Sometime later Deck returns to Yaoya and presents Tessa's head to his father. Jar still thinks he's a disgrace and sends out 2 guards to kill him, but Deck moves fast and easily kills them first. Then Deck fights Jar, who hides with his camouflage cloak. Deck activates the ship's engine to create a sandstorm that allows him to see his father's location and cuts his arm off to stop him. Then he captures him with a cage device. When Deck symbolically stabs his dad's helmet, Jar takes it off and says that Del can join the clan if he shields. However, Del says he already has a clan before a grown-up Bud eats Jar's head. Thea congratulates him while Deck takes his father's cloak. At that moment another ship appears and Deck says it's his mother.